Hello, everybody. This is the CT Sports Talent Show. My name is Christopher Saunders. I'm pleased to have on Jon Winer, who is the athletic director of Crec and also the commissioner of CRAL, and he'll get into both of those as far as what they mean and whatnot. Jon, I really appreciate you coming on.
Well, thank you, Chris. I'm looking forward to chatting with you.
It's always great to be able to talk to athletic directors, but I think to be able to have somebody who is both an AD and a commissioner, you really kind of have your not just your voice, but your name and everything in a lot of different things. And it's great to be able to talk with you about obviously what you do and whatnot. Before we get into that, I asked you to send me over some information. You sent me your resume, and it's amazing how much you have done in what seems like a short amount of time because you still have so much more to do, right? And I know we talked on the phone before you went on vacation. Just kind of talk to me a little bit as far as the basketball side, because I think that is a very cool thing. Both coaching and whatnot. Where you've been. Just kind of talk about that a little bit if you can.
Sure. Yes, basketball was something I took a lot of pride in. Spent a lot of time doing growing up. Went to Clark University, had an opportunity to be part of the program there for 2 years. When I say part of the program, I mean that literally. We had a really good team back then, and you kind of come to that realization that your playing days are ending. But I knew I wanted to be around the sport, so I
Mhm.
you know, always thought about coaching. And when I graduated from college, one of our assistant coaches got the head coaching job at Becker College, Scott Dion, and he brought me over there with him as his assistant coach. So I was with him for 2 years at Becker while I was teaching full time. And then after 2 years, a unique opportunity opened up at the community college in Worcester, Quinsigamond Community College. Head coaching opportunity. I was 24 at the time, definitely underqualified for it, and was not ready to be a head coach, but they took a chance on me and gave me the opportunity. And it's kind of one of those things you learn on the fly. I was coaching guys that were 2 to 3 years younger than me. Luckily, I was in a position in Worcester where there was a lot of basketball talent, which we were able to draw to the community college level. But it's a matter of keeping them there academically, behaviorally focused. And so our first year we took our bumps. And then our second year, we had a chance to recruit in a class. It didn't hurt that we had the best player in the country, Maurice Fortin, back for a second year. And we were able to go to the National Final Four, win the New England region for the first time in school history. And it was at that time that I realized, you know what, I want to try full-time coaching. So I had emailed every D1 and D2 school on, probably from Washington, D.C. up to Maine. And I heard back from two. I heard back from Lehigh and Army, and I was able to go interview at both places. Lehigh offered me a position. It was the third assistant position, which was a grad assistant position. It was unpaid at the time. And I already had my master's degree. So, a grad assistant position didn't really give me a lot, but it did give me an opportunity to be a full-time coach. And so I went there as the third assistant. I was there for 2 years, moved up to the second assistant for the second year. Ended up getting, some camp money and then a salary for the second year as well. And after 2 years, it was a great experience, but I realized that it wasn't for me, the lifestyle and just the amount of film and all that stuff. But I had a great opportunity to work with Brett Reed, who's still there. And I was able to recruit a couple of the starting players who actually beat Duke in 2012. And one was not, CJ McCollum was not one of my recruits, unfortunately. So I moved back to Connecticut, got back into teaching, coached for a year at University of New Haven with Ted Hotaling, who's still there. And then this position opened up. I had really no interest prior to this opening up in athletic administration, but I had just completed my 092 with the intention of being maybe an assistant principal one day. But this opened up. My wife worked for the organization and she spoke very highly of it. So I applied for it and they offered me the position, really unique position in that they hadn't had sports. So there were 4 high schools or 5 at the time, and students who attended those schools would have the opportunity to go back and play for their sending district. So they had not made a commitment to sports. when I came on, they were making that commitment. They were going to offer sports on campus. And
Mhm.
so again, I just finished my 10th year here. We have the four schools: aerospace up in Windsor, comp sci up in Enfield, innovation over in New Britain, and international over in Bloomfield. And coincidentally, we were also starting a league. So our schools, along with HMTCA and Achievement First, they were also starting sports at the same time. So they decided to make a league, the Capital Region Athletic League. And so I moved actually as commissioner of that league as well as an additional role. And so the league's been interesting. We started with 7 schools. We actually went down to 5 at one time because one school closed and one school moved to the NCCC. I was in a position where I was trying to figure out, do we just kind of close up shop and find other leagues for our 4 Crec schools? And then, we recruited, Parish Hill was looking for a home. So we were up to 6. And then University was looking for a home, and then 7. And then Classical and Weaver, and now we're up to 12. And we have all the Hartford schools except for 2, SMSA and Hartford Public, and we've really built, in a very short time span, really expanded. I mean, and it's been a good thing. We've been able to get more kids involved in our athletic program and our philosophy as a league, and it's provided opportunities for student leadership and some really good things that we're working with the CIAC in partnership with.
When you mentioned about how the league was at a point where it could potentially have been, like you said, closing up shop when you were down to 5, I don't know if you were following what's been going on in college football, but with the Pac-12 being basically the Pac-4, because you
Yeah.
have various teams going to the Big 12, Colorado, Arizona State, so on and so forth, and also going to the Big Ten as well. Oregon, Washington got poached. We know about USC and UCLA. For you to be able to, as somebody who, now, when was that occurring as far as when they were dropping to 5? When was that
So
change?
we started a league in 2013, right when we started sports at Crec, and then I want to say it was probably around 2017 that we really, we went, it's when starting a new league is not something that's done quite often. And so, yeah, I mean, it was down to 5, and you can't really operate that way, just like the Pac-10, you can't put a league schedule together. The timing worked out with some schools looking to leave, like University, Classical, Parish Hill. They were in with the tech schools, and then the tech schools said, we just want a tech league. So they were all looking for a home, and then Weaver kind of out, the CCC kind of, with some of the sports, it wasn't a competitive balance. Capital Prep, similar, now we've got the 12. Hartford Public's expressed interest in applying for 2024, and I mean, as I said, it's been a good turn of events for us.
When that was occurring, and it was only a select teams at the time, were you, not to say you were panicking, but were you worried, or were you somebody that was okay? Let's try to exhaust every scenario, possibility, maybe people I know
Mhm.
before we even entertain that option, because that's kind of like the grenade, right? The doomsday,
Mhm.
if it was to get to that
Yeah.
point. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I had been in touch with whether it's Chris Fulton over at Capital Prep, talking about, this could be a good fit for you. I believe it was Matt Shea at the time over at University. So I had those conversations, and they were considering it. And then, like I said, things just started to fall into place. I think once we got a couple of the Hartford schools, then
Mhm.
more were willing to jump on board. And with Buckley joining us last year, and like I said, now we've got all of them except for 2, and Hartford Public maybe in another year.
You could help me as far as kind of the overall sports of Crec, but I know that there are some very good, because obviously basketball is one of the sports I broadcast, so I follow it, very religiously during the season. And innovation, I think it's either Division 4 or Division 5, have been very good. I think they won a championship. I could be wrong,
Yeah.
but Is that kind of, and I know every sport is the top because it's high school sports. Every sport deserves respect. But in terms of Crec, is basketball one of the sports that's kind of like the leader as far as the sports in the league?
Yeah, definitely. I would say across the board, if you look at the schools in our league, boys basketball especially is a strength. We've had a really good team this past year. Innovation, like you said, won the Division 5 championship in 2018, and Matt does a great job with that program. I think quite honestly, some of the other sports, what we might call suburban sports like baseball, softball, and even soccer to a certain extent, um, we're not as competitive with. And I think that's the result of a lot of the kids that we draw, whether it's from Hartford, New Britain. A lot of them are coming from towns that don't have a substantial youth program that will get them involved in those sports. Volleyball or basketball, you could pick up, or track, you could pick up when you're in 8th grade, 9th grade, and based off of athleticism, be okay.
Mhm.
Baseball, softball, I mean, if you're not playing those sports when you're 8 or 9 years old, additionally, if you don't have opportunities to play, even somewhat year round, which a lot of our kids do not, you're going to struggle to become competitive with some of those suburban schools that are in our backyard. And
Mhm.
it's kind of what happened to Weaver, in the CCC. Like, they can compete with boys basketball and track and some other sports, but some of those more sports that are more youth based, it's hard.
I know. I think Weaver just restarted their baseball program. I think last
Mm.
year was the
Yeah.
first year either in forever or first time, and they had a good year for a program that for a long time never had one. And I think that's a great point what you said as far as the differences as far as kind of where it's, when you look at baseball, right? It's very expensive to play. You need at least another person. But in like basketball, it's very easy. Get a basketball and you could shoot forever. You could basically play by yourself, but you can do various drills, as you know, being a former coach and it being at Clark. As somebody who is the athletic director and also the commissioner of CRAL as well, the athletic director of Crec, is that kind of one of the, and I know you probably have a litany of things that you want to be able to get done. We were just talking about football, OTA start on Thursday, right? But as far as kind of expanding sports and hopefully one day maybe Crec or CRAL rather, the league itself can kind of up their ante and things can get better in sports that maybe they're struggling with. Is that something that's a focus during the school year or maybe even during the off season?
Yeah, so opportunity is huge. So probably about 6 or 7 schools in our league actually just added boys volleyball this spring. And I'm really excited about that sport. I think the learning curve is very, very quick, and we can be competitive there. One of our innovation actually just, they never had football. They're going to co-op with Prince Tech this year. So, and I think a lot of the schools in our league are looking for ways to give kids opportunities, even if it can't be a standalone program, whether it's because of facilities or interest. Finding another school in the league that, or out of the league even, that can help support that. I think we're one of the things that makes our league special is the experience that we give kids. About 5 or 6 years ago, we started a student leadership program with Sharice Miller from the CIEC, and it's been tremendous. We meet 4 times a year. There's 4 representatives from each school, so you're talking about 48 to 50 kids, and we basically lean on them to identify areas of need in our league. Several years ago, sportsmanship was a hot button issue for our kids, so we said, "Great, what are you going to do to improve it in our league?" They came up with an idea of these wristbands, which we've still continued to this day, where each team in our league, each game, they distribute a wristband to an opposing player who demonstrates positive sportsmanship. And so, our student leadership group has been the best thing for, I think, in growing our league, because it's
Mhm.
developed our league into a beacon of sportsmanship, and something we can really be proud of. I mean, ultimately, yeah, we want our kids to win. We want them to compete, but there's only so much you can control. And within education-based athletics,
Mhm.
98% of our kids, their playing career is going to end when they finish with us, what are we doing to provide them with skills to be productive members of society moving forward? And so, like I said, the character and the sportsmanship, those are really big pieces. Community service in our league, and our schools work together to really hold each other accountable to ensure that we're focusing on what's really important.
I've always believed the biggest way to be able to improve something is not so much looking at the success, because I feel like success can kind of be a little bit wavery because of depending on the time. But when you get input from people, right? When you hear from, like you just mentioned, as far as from the kids within the crawl league itself from various schools, I mean, is that something that has always been done, where you're always trying to get input from not just players but just the kids itself? Because they, in my years of broadcasting with WATR, just being able to talk with these student athletes, right? They have a lot of very good ideas. It's just that it's hard for them to execute them because of various reasons, right? Because maybe financials aren't there, maybe they don't have the backing of various, places and so on. I mean, how awesome is that to have the kids, be able to have that much input?
Yeah, it's really important. Again, they are the ones that are coming up with much better ideas than myself or many of the adults in our league, right? I mean, they're the ones that are in the trenches that are having the conversations, are playing the games, and so they're identifying what we can do to be better and create a better environment. I mean, they talk about how we can honor officials. I mean, they see it. They see that games are postponed due to lack of officials. And so they talk about, well, what can we be doing at our level to improve that and make it better for those that come after us. So absolutely. I mean, we can, as athletic administrators, we can sit in a room and talk, and we might come up with a couple of good ideas. But yeah, I mean, the kids are the ones that are really there and are seeing things on a different level than we are.
When I'm, hearing about all this is amazing, right? And to me, it's crazy, because I think somebody, if you were just to ask I don't want to say a random person within the high school sports community, but let's say maybe somebody who just goes to games, likes high school sports, right? If you ask them, "Hey, have you heard about the Crawl League?" They would be like, "Crawl," or maybe
Mhm.
Crec, because of obviously the schools and such.
Mhm.
Why is it with all of this good stuff that like the league is not talked about? Because I feel like it should be, but it's not. Do you know why?
I mean, I think number one, we don't have football as a league. Our teams, our schools that offer football are in the Pequot, Weavers in the ECC. So we don't offer football as a league. That's one thing. But I mean, ultimately, let's be honest. I mean, we're not winning multiple state championships every year. It's we're just we're not there yet. I mean, I think in certain programs we can get there, and we do have ideas as how to make our teams more competitive. But I mean, we're never, well, I shouldn't say never, but I mean, we're not at the point where, where CCC teams are coming back and saying, as a league, we won 21 state championships this year. I mean, it's just not us, right? I mean, so I think I'm proud of the work we do. I think the CIEC does help us with getting some positive publicity and feedback for the off the court stuff that we're doing with our student athletes. But ultimately, it's just a microcosm of what's going to make the game time CT or whatever. It's gonna be the teams that win the state championships, and that's okay. I mean, we can still take stock in the fact that we know what we're doing with our kids, and we know, and we can be proud of that, but it's also on us to kind of work with guys like you to make sure that our kids are getting that positive publicity as well and celebrating what they're doing.
Even though and I know you mentioned, I think it was what innovation will be with Prince Tech, right? Is that
Yes, yep.
okay? So even though football is not part of crawl just yet, and hopefully maybe down the road, and I would think it will be at some point if everything can go well, that the schools maybe will even have their own teams. Hopefully that can be
Mhm.
something that can be accomplished. But not just, just not having football, I feel like should not be a deterrence, as far as, okay, just because you don't have football, we don't care about you, we're not going to follow you. I mean, we talked about innovation. What was it, 2018, 2019? They won a championship. Nothing to gloss your eyes over. I mean, winning a basketball championship is not easy. There's only so many that win every year. I think that's something where there's a lot of good both on and off the field, and it deserves the attention, I think. And again, I'm not going to tell people what to cover, what to do, but I feel like there should be, with the amount of what we've seen the last couple years with fights going on during basketball games. With I remember last year, I think maybe it was 2 years ago, could be last year, it could be wrong. Crosby High School was having some incidents as far as with football games, and they had to move their games to Saturday at like 10 o'clock because of fights and some serious allegations going on. And it doesn't seem like that is going on in the crawl league. And it's like another one notch to you guys. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, and again, our league, we have our issues here and there, like everybody does. But I agree. I think that the stuff that we try to do to promote sportsmanship and keep that at the forefront of our student athletes' minds, it's really created a culture where now we've been there long enough that our seniors, when our freshmen come in, they're mentoring them. And quite honestly, it's the coaches too, right? I mean, that we've coaches that have been around now and understand the education-based athletic philosophy, so they're teaching that down to their players. I mean, if you look at a lot of the coaches we have are coaching multiple sports, and they're doing a tremendous job with it. And again, like we want our kids to compete, right? We're out there to win games just like anybody else, but sometimes it's just not in the cards. I think our coaches sometimes don't like when I say that. I do believe that 80% probably of your team is who walks through that door. You can coach them up, but ultimately, you can't recruit. And who comes through is what you have. And so you can coach them up, but ultimately, you know, if innovation plays Southington in baseball, there's only so much you can do, right? We can control, which is the off the field stuff, and using that towards the on field stuff as well.
The league is so young for a majority of reasons, and I think is as long as you keep doing what you're doing, I would think that over the course of time, I don't want to say the pain, but I think the work that has been done and maybe not being quote unquote relevant amongst a majority of the sports community in Connecticut, I think will be kind of forgotten once things kind of fall into place. And it sounds like, John, that things are happening. It's just that it's taking time. And I think that's the biggest thing for people. And you probably know this as a basketball coach for many, many years, right? You wish that we could just go right to a state championship, as far as maybe when you were coaching, or not state championship, but at Lehigh, NCAA, getting to the tournament, winning the whole thing. Well, it takes time. It just doesn't happen. Even the best teams. Look at Kentucky. They've got how many top five out of the top 100? They've got all these talented players, but they end up either not making it or they get bounced really early in the NCAA tournament. So things take time.
Sure. Yeah, and again, you can't always control what happens on the court, as long as you just run into a better team, right? And as long as we know our kids are given the best of their abilities, and representing themselves and their families and the schools well, then we've done our job.
John, I really appreciate you coming on. It's been a lot of fun being able to talk with you. Really quick before I let you go, is there any news amongst the crawl league that you want to be able to share before we sign off here?
Um, I mean, we're getting ready for another season, another year, another school year. And I know our we've got our Crec football co-op that is in the Pequot, and Capital Prep's in the Pequot as well, and Weaver in the ECC. So we're getting ready for that. And I know I don't want to put too much pressure on Matt, but Matt's got the majority of his Innovation Boys basketball team back this year, and so we're excited to see how that pans out. But between girls volleyball and our soccer teams and cross country, it'll be a fun fall, and it always is, and it'll be here before you know it.
Now, when does the boys volleyball? Because you mentioned that's starting up, correct? Now, when does that start?
Yeah, so we had our first season was this past spring, so that's a spring sport, and again, that was a lot of fun. We had great participation numbers. I know a lot of tech schools are starting that up. Windsor High School started it up as well, so that's kind of a growing sport, and it's a fun one. The kids like it, and the numbers are there.
That's awesome to hear. John, again, I really appreciate you coming on. This has been awesome. Stay in touch. I'd love to be able to get you back on maybe during the seasons, no matter what the sports are, to be able to kind of catch me up on what's going on with the Crec Athletics and the Crawl League itself. So thank you again.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, Chris.
Always. I'll wrap things up here in the CT Sports Talent Show. So until next time, stay safe. Remember, CT stands for Connecticut Talent. I'm going to find them all. Enjoy their stay, everybody, and be well.